All right, folks. Welcome back to week 2 of the Daily Destroyer, the DFS show of the Dynasty Warzone Network. I'm your host, Tyler, at FTylerO, and joined, as always, by my co-host, Lou, at LouDog Sports. Real quick, let's recap how week 1 went for us. Lou, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, week 1 was, as we expected, pretty straightforward, and I think a lot of people's weeks, especially mine, came down to this late news with Trey Sermon being a scratch, and if you were going to go and play Mostert or not, basically. So I switched my lineup and went with the Mostert one. There's a couple different things you could have done. So originally I was doing the strategy of all 3 like high priced running backs and then 3 cheap wide receivers. So then when the Mostert news comes out and he's only 5,800 and seemed like, great matchup against the Lions. And obviously like he was expected to get most of the work, right? So to me, it seemed like I could go to Mostert and then take Calvin Ridley, so pay up in one of the wide receiver spots. And then I'm not playing 3 rookie wide receivers in the first NFL game. So I think the process of me switching, sometimes it's going to work out. But this time it just ended up not working out. He got hurt, and that it's better than he played the full game, had 15 carries for 45 yards. I think in this sense, I can come out of it saying I had the correct process.
Things went a little better for me. I did not shift into Mostert. I think what got me is I was actually on my way to the Lions game, so I didn't really have time to shift all my lineup. So I was able to keep those big 3 running backs we talked about: CMC, Joe Mixon, and Kamara. They were all great plays. And then at the same time, fading Pitts and Callaway, some of the chalk on the week. We talked about that on the podcast. That was something that also paid as well. So I had a much better week because I decided to not play Mostert, was able to actually cash 100% of my head-to-heads. So things were good in week 1. We hope to carry that momentum into week 2 here. So let's dive into it, man. It is week 2. Let's start with the quarterback position. I think the first thing I really want to talk about here is what's going to be, again, there's always like a game that's going to be like the theme of which we talk about. And that's going to be the Cowboys and the Chargers. 2 of the higher owned quarterbacks on the slate are likely going to be Justin Herbert at 6,700 and Dak Prescott at 6,800. This game has a 55.5 last time I looked, over under. Like that's insane points here to be had. This is a pretty juicy matchup. Let's kick it off. Those quarterbacks. Your interest in Justin Herbert or Dak Prescott?
Right now, Herbert is the guy that I expect to play. 6,700. He is, for a young quarterback, he's as much of a, in this specific game, I don't want to say it's like a lock, but it's a pretty high likelihood that he throws for over 300 yards and gets that bonus.
That's his over-under. It's 300.5 right now.
Yeah. So, whenever you see a line like that, you expect it even more. And, last week he had 337 passing yards and only 1 touchdown. So, if he ends up getting 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, he's likely getting at least 25 points for you fantasy wise. So he seems pretty safe. The downside risk of someone like Herbert is that he doesn't really run the ball at all. So if he's not going to be running, then that's where his upside is a little lower than maybe Dak's is in that same game. But the thing with Dak is, as we know, Zeke could get goal line carries and get all the touchdowns in any given week. So I think it's more likely that he gets sort of vultured in that sense, where if anything happens by the goal line, it could end up being Zeke.
Yeah, and I like Herbert as well. There's no surprise that he's projected to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks on the slate. You look at last week, he was like, first of all, let's talk about the offensive line on the Chargers. Like, they invested a lot into that offensive line to make it better this season, to protect Herbert, to protect their franchise quarterback. And they played the Washington football team week 1. Pretty damn good defense. I know it wasn't great last night on Thursday, but like still a damn good defense. They weren't really able to get much pressure on Herbert, and now they're playing the Cowboys, who are down their 2 top pass rushers. We just saw one of them go down with a broken foot. The other is on the COVID list. Like there's going to be almost no pass rush generated by the Cowboys in this game, and I expect Herbert to be able to sit back there and sling the ball all he wants. And if the Cowboys are scoring points, which they proved they could do against a very good defense, there's no surprise. There's the 55-point over/under, and Herbert seems to be one of the smash plays in cash. Like it seems like I would lean Herbert's way. I think Dak's also a fine play. But at the same time, Herbert seems to be the guy as of right now. Let's talk about a couple of the other more expensive plays on the slate. Just if you're interested, obviously Kyler is going to be insanely priced at 82. Rightfully so in some regards because he does have the rushing upside. We do have Josh Allen, who I think is due for a bounce back week. I think he's one of those plays where he played the Steelers defense, things didn't go well, but we know that's prolific passing offense, and at 7,200, and especially if you rush it in like a touchdown, like that is a great price as well. And then Tom Brady absolutely lit it up at 6,900 playing the Falcons, who, the Eagles could be decent, but in the end of the day, I think the Falcons are just absolutely horrible. So thoughts on Kyler, Josh Allen, and Tom Brady, some of those higher priced quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think when it comes to someone like Kyler, like now he's 8,200. Last week, I talked about him as he was in my consideration, but he's oddly enough he's become more of these like efficiency quarterbacks. Where last week he scored a lot of points, but that's because he ran a touchdown in and threw for 4. So he only threw the ball 32 times last game versus a Josh Allen who threw it 50 times. And it's interesting that you worded it as a bounce back for Josh Allen, and I think that's more of just the fact that they lost the game versus I mean he still completed 30 passes when Kyler only threw 32 passes, but it's a game of fantasy where it really comes out to touchdowns. But we saw Josh Allen still have 40 rushing yards. Unfortunately, he had the fumble in there, so that takes some points away. But he's still at 18 points. His floor is one of the best. So I think Josh Allen is a great play off of that Dallas LA game. And then Brady, like you said, it's a great matchup. They're going to be passing the ball. He had 32 fantasy points last week, and it's a team that, whenever Tom Brady is in the league, he's going to be a focal point of an offense. And also, we might come to it in the running backs, but they're planning on starting Rojo more and playing him this week. So
we'll see.
To me, I don't necessarily think that means they're going to run it more often. But we've seen it in the past where, like, when Rojo's in there, he becomes somewhat of like a dump off guy for Brady. So, I think of those guys, Josh Allen's probably the only one that I'd be playing this week, but it's mostly because if I'm going to come off of those other guys, why not just spend $300 more to pick up Josh Allen versus Brady?
Yeah, and Fournette was a dump off guy last in week 1. I can't remember if he had 7 catches or 7 targets, but either way, he was that dump off guy. But I agree with you in the fact that for just $300, going Allen over Brady is definitely the way to go. One last guy that I want to bring up before I turn it over to you to maybe go cheaper at quarterback is Jalen Hurts. 6,500 still relatively cheap. We know he's going to rush the ball a decent amount, and the 49ers defense was not looking particularly strong. The Lions hung a lot of points. Some of it was garbage time, but at the same time, like, garbage time still counts just as much as regular time. So, at 6,500, is there any thought in going back to that Jalen Hurts well? Because I know that's where I went in week 1 and it paid off.
I don't think taking Hurts is really like, if you need that $200, I don't think it's falling that far off from Herbert. Like you said, I think the Hurts line for rushing is upper 40s right now. And so you consider he has pretty much a floor of 5 points just from running. And then, probably at least 200 passing yards around there. So, if he gets one touchdown, all of a sudden, it's so easy for him to reach 18 points just because of how he plays the game. And I think it's more of a tournament play because of the matchup, but hopefully that matchup scares people off because they get touted as, oh, well, they're facing San Francisco, so it's a harder matchup. And in a way, it'd be cool if he had a lower scoring game because then his price won't be $7K next week. But I actually kind of like Stafford right there too. I think there's going to be way less people playing him, and he showed last week. I mean, he had a ridiculous stat line if you look at it, like very efficient, 20 of 26, 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I mean, I know you're a Stafford guy too, but like he's just a perfect fit there, is he not? Like it seems like he's
yeah, it's perfect.
Potentially going to settle in LA here and have a great season.
Things are absolutely great. I love to see Stafford succeed. I am rooting for the guy wholeheartedly. Any other cheap quarterbacks that you're looking at, or are we really just looking at these more of like top end guys going into week 2?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I think someone like a Joe Burrow is somewhat interesting, just because if you want to go cheap quarterback under 6K, he seems like one that any given week could end up with that 300-yard bonus and a few touchdowns, especially since we saw last week with Jamar Chase. It seems like they're already have a little bit of that connection back. So he's probably, if I was going to go cheap, the way that I would go.
All right, give me your top 3 quarterbacks of the week, Lou.
For me, it's going to be just Herbert, Allen, and then I'll say Stafford instead of Dak, just to be different.
I like it. I absolutely like it. Let's move along to the running back position. Last week, we decided that we were going to be playing some of the guys at the top. Ended up being good. I know your Mostert switch, but I think our process was right early on, Lou, in terms of getting some of those higher, and not the highest end guy, but some of the higher end guys in there. Let's start there. At the top, Christian McCaffrey, almost 10K. Dalvin Cook, 91, and Alvin Kamara at 88. Are you trying to play 2 of these guys? One of these guys, is one stick out to you as the clear best play of the 3? What's your thoughts here?
It's a little different this week, and I think some of that has to do with the value at wide receiver is different than last week. In a cash build, I think you either do one of these guys or none. There's just a lot more value in the mid range at running back. So I think of these 3, I probably like Kamara the most, partially due to the 1,100 gap in price, because we know they pretty much have similar ceilings, Kamara and McCaffrey, and I mean they both have great floors. So what we saw last week with CMC, obviously he didn't hit the 100-yard bonus.
Didn't score
either running and receiving. He didn't get either bonus, no touchdowns, and he still had 28 fantasy points.
Yeah,
and
nice.
So that's just something that no other running back does. I mean, Kamara ran 20 times and he had 3 catches. So it could have easily been a much bigger game for Kamara. He only had 8 receiving yards. He could have had 50 receiving yards. And then all of a sudden we're talking about he had 25 fantasy points, So the difference here is just that CMC is basically locked in for 25 plus touches in a given week. And I think Kamara's ceiling on touches is a little lower, but his efficiency can be pretty high. We've seen it in the past. So
and you save some money. I mean, you save $1,100, which is also a decent amount of cash to save.
Yeah, right. And that's the big thing for me is it wouldn't surprise me if one had 30 points, another had 26 points, and in that case, you just whoever's cheaper is better at that point. So those are between them, and I'm not that interested in Dalvin this week. I mean, he did have 7 targets with the 6 catches last week, but I don't know, 9,100 for Dalvin at that point. I still feel more confident that Kamara is going to get that sort of receiving game, and maybe it was just based on the game flow last week that Dalvin had more, but he is in a matchup against the Cardinals. So it could be a little more up in pace, which could lead to another game like that for Dalvin. But I still think I said Kamara.
Let's drop down to that 6K range, and specifically the cheaper side of 6K. I think there's three guys I want to really talk about because I think they're going to be the highest owned running backs in the slate. That's going to be Najee Harris at 6,300, Chris Carson at 61, and Ezekiel Elliott at 62. You know, the idea behind Najee Harris is going to be the fact that he got 100% of the RB snaps. Like, that's huge. Like, when we talk about like finding a good cash play at running back, it's like they need to see snaps, they need to see volume. And yes, I think the Bills defense is pretty good, but the Raiders aren't that great. I mean, they're better than I thought they were, to be completely honest, but you're getting a running back who's getting 100% of the snaps, 6,300. Like, that is a beautiful thing, especially because we know he can be a threat in the pass game. Chris Carson, Penny's out. This could easily be a game where they could run the ball successfully. 6,100. Chris Carson getting 75% of the workload is something I could 75% of the workload could easily happen for Chris Carson in this one. And Ezekiel Elliott, he definitely face planted in week one, but like the usage was there. And I think the one thing that sticks out to me the most about Ezekiel Elliott was, he was pass blocking, yes, but he was still the running back in third and long situations. He was still the running back in the 2-minute drills. He was on the field. And you could argue, yeah, maybe that was because he was in there pass blocking, but at the same time, like, he's in there. That's something that we like to see. Like, people are like, oh, Pollard caught a bunch of balls. Yeah, he did, but they were like more so designed. Ezekiel is the running back still in third and long situations and in 2-minute scenarios. So, like, we got to think something's going to happen. And he's got something around like 82% of the snaps or something like that. Like, he was an absolute workhorse in that one in terms of snaps, not actual carries. So,
right.
We're talking about three guys who profile for a lot of work and are in that 6K range and are a lot cheaper than those three we talked about. So, out of Najee Harris, Chris Carson, Ezekiel Elliott, do you like all three? Do you like one, two? One interests you the most? Talk to me.
I still don't have much interest in Zeke. I mean, even if he's in there more often, he still only touched the ball 13 times and was very inefficient with those touches. So he interests me less, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm more interested in the passing attacks in that game.
Fair.
So of the three, like he's probably my lowest. I think the one I am most confident in is Chris Carson. We've seen it in the past with the Seahawks where, especially if Penny's not going to be there, the likelihood that Chris Carson could easily come out of this game with 25 carries, especially if they get an early lead. He had 16 last week, but he had the 3 targets as well. So
they're almost a touchdown favorite. I mean, the Seahawks being a touchdown favorite helps a lot in that scenario to kind of lend to that thought.
Yeah, and we saw last week Tennessee. I mean, wasn't a great start to the season for Tennessee.
It was bad, man. It was a bad start of the season. Man.
I mean,
we don't have to sugarcoat that.
Maybe Tennessee's defense is just taking a step back. Because I think going into the season, I picked them up on a couple season-long leagues, and obviously, like maybe I'll notice it a little more because of that. But it seemed like they're not that great of a defense, and if Russell cooks the beginning of this game and they get out to say a 2-touchdown league, we know the Seahawks are very willing to turn to Chris Carson and just feed him the ball a bunch. And he had 5.7 yards per carry last week. So he's been pretty good so far. And it seems like a game where he's going to have the opportunity to have that big upside. If he gets a touchdown or two in this game, it's an easy 25 points, I think, from him. And then with Najee, I'm still somewhat concerned. But fair. That's just because of just the output, I think. But we know with the Steelers and Big Ben, they could easily throw 50 times in a given game. So what's nice about it is, like you said, he's in on every play. And because of that, if they are passing, the likelihood that they dump the ball off to him is still there. So he only had 6 fantasy points last week, but we know he's out there all the time. And this is the type of matchup at home against the Raiders. Raiders coming off of the short week. So I like Najee as well. And I think that's the order I would go: Carson, Najee, and then Zeke.
And then the last guy that I want to mention before I turn it over to you is a guy that I don't know if on the fence is the right word, but someone I've been really flirting with getting in those lineups. That's going to be Nick Chubb this week. I mean, he's coming in at 7,800. Obviously a bit of a saver off those top, but a bit more than those three guys we talked about. But they're playing the Houston Texans. They're not good. And I think that they're quite a resounding favorite. Like, forgive me,
kind of like they lead the league in wins. Houston Texans.
Yeah. Oh my god. All right. So yeah, they're a 13-point favorite. Last week we saw Chubb get 15 attempts. Yeah, 2 catches, 2 targets. That's a nice little pad there. But like 18 to 20 attempts on the ground against this defense could be, and when they're almost a 2-touchdown favorite, could be an absolutely wonderful thing. Just like thinking about the game script that's going to happen, how good the Browns looked last week. Like Chubb could be in a situation again to score another 2 touchdowns and get over 100 yards with a little bit, through the air even, because they seem to be throwing to him a bit. So your thoughts, 7,800 Nick Chubb?
I think he's okay. He's kind of in a little bit of dead zone as far as price. He's 500 above him, 500 below him. But I don't think too many people will be on Derrick Henry this week in general. So it's kind of like if you're not taking one of the top 3 guys, this is where you would next go to. So having Chubb in your lineup is already going to make you different. But where it makes you different is the construction, because you're going to be either that 1,500 more than the range we just talked about, or 1,000 less than the top range. So all of a sudden you are building a different lineup. Just
you're opening yourself up to a lot of different
stuff. That's what's interesting with him. And as we saw last week, he had the 2 touchdowns. He could easily go for another 2 touchdowns in this game with over 100 yards. And I mean, that's great. He's for 7,800. That's pretty solid. And this is one of those matchups that you're even more confident in, that he comes out of this game with either 100 yards or 2 touchdowns. But I mean, we've seen it before with Nick Chubb. Like, would it surprise you if he came out of this game with over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns?
No, it would not.
He does have that upside, especially in a game like this where they're heavy favorites. They're going to be one of the chalkier survivor pool teams this week, I think, and they're at home. So they're going to want to control this game and likely get out to a lead early on, and then just run it with Chubb, run it with Kareem Hunt, and move on to the next game, basically.
Another guy who I'm sorry, I was going to hand a review, but then I just saw the name. Like, we got to talk about it. Josh Jacobs is out. That's going to lead a lot of people to Kenyon Drake's way at 4,900. He's probably going to be, the lead back, and we know he's going to get a lot of pass work. We saw that last week. So it is Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, that is a pretty awful matchup in terms of running backs go. But, I expect his ownership to rise. I expect him to probably be the top 5, top 6 owned running backs on the week. Thoughts on Kenyon Drake?
I like him. I think he's okay. He's not like a screaming value. We've seen what he can do when he's given the lead role, but even when he was playing in, say, Miami, he would have games where 15 carries for 45 yards, and he's not the type of running back that Josh Jacobs is, where close to the end zone, they're going to be feeding him to try to get the touchdowns, barreling through, So
Peyton Barber.
Yeah, I think he's more of a point per dollar kind of play, where because he's under 5K, and it allows you to likely either jam in one of these other big running backs or get fill up on the good wide receivers that are on this slate. So that's where I think I have interest in him. I'm not sure if I'll go there in cash, but I definitely see it if you're willing to do that. But I don't really know if there's anyone else in that range around him. Maybe, I don't know. I think I'd rather have Drake than Rojo, but isn't Rojo kind of in the same scenario where now he has this lead back role and in a good game, as you mentioned earlier. Falcons defense is not that great.
Trust it. I just don't trust Rojo to get the touches, man. They benched him last time, man. That's my thing is I just don't trust him to get the touches, and I don't think he's going to be used in the pass game. So,
what about Chase Edmonds?
All right.
Also same price. So those three guys, I guess that's why I'm not that excited to play Drake, because either of those two other guys, I think easily could come out of this game with more fantasy points than him.
Yep.
Less ownership too.
Is there a running back or two that we have not touched on that you're very much interested in, or on the flip side of that, very much fading?
I've been hearing. Do you have any interest in Damian Harris?
Yes,
against the Jets.
I do have interest in Damian Harris against the Jets. I talked about it last night. One of my bolder calls was Damian Harris, 100 yards and a touchdown this week. I think that the game sets up really well for the Patriots to control the line of scrimmage. I think if all goes well, they're really going to pound the rock against the Jets. Like the game, the line would say that they're a bit of a favorite, so they'd be ahead and they could be running the ball. So I do have some interest in Damian Harris. It's just, we're playing DK, it's full PPR, like without, that pass work. I don't guarantee, there's no such thing as a guarantee, but at the same time, like we know they have James White, and James White's going to be that guy, that they're going to be passing the ball to if they're down. It's not going to be Damian Harris. So I think it's little bit riskier of a play.
On the site like DraftKings, that someone like Chase Edmonds, if they end up being behind in their game, all of a sudden he makes up those points by getting 3-4 catches. So if Damian Harris comes out of this game with 98 rushing yards and no touchdown, then all of a sudden he has less than 10 points. Yeah,
I think if Damian Harris was a 4,900, I would probably be a lot more interested than at 54. Like I haven't really looked into exactly what that would save me, but it's just I feel like the floor is just not there. If things, go sideways, we just haven't seen enough. So I guess like I like playing them in like your season long leagues, but there's just other running backs that I'm more interested in these DFS lineups.
He's probably safe, in season long, where he's safer than the other guys we were just talking about.
Absolutely, you got for time's sake here, Lou, you got one more running back that you need to get off your chest. Or are we good?
No, I'm set on running backs.
All right, give me your 4 favorite running backs plays of the week, and just folks, we are recording Friday night. Just a reminder. So as a Friday night, these are the favorite picks. So again, things can change as news comes out. But as a Friday night, your top 4 running back picks.
I like Carson, Harris, Kamara, Najee Harris. Oh yeah, sorry, Kamara, and then I actually like for if you're going to do tournaments and trying to be different, if you want to take someone like Austin Eckler in that game, where a lot of people are going to be going with the Herbert and wide receiver stacking of that game, I think Eckler is a way to be a little different. Maybe you have a Dak lineup with Eckler as the bring back instead of Herbert in like Keenan Allen or whatever. So I kind of like Eckler in tournaments to be different. Seemed like he didn't get the same. He had 0 targets last game, but
that can't last.
That's not gonna. Yeah. So he could easily come in this game with 10 targets, and no one would be surprised. So I think he's an interesting tournament play.
Wide receivers shifting over here. So I think again the theme of the show in some ways is let's talk about that big game, the 55-point, the Cowboys and the Chargers. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. For reference, Amari Cooper is going to be 6,800, Lamb is 6,400, Keenan Allen is 7, and Mike Williams, if you got it in front of you, I'm looking, scrolling right now, is going to be 6,100. Mike Williams is 6,100. So none of them are necessarily priced like ridiculously high. That's what I think is like the most interesting here is there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wide receivers above all those names we mentioned. So I expect all of those wide receivers we just mentioned to be decently owned going into this. Just talk about those set of, I don't know if elite wide receivers, throwing Mike Williams in there, but those 4 wide receivers in that game that we know people are going to be targeting. What's your interest there?
I think a lot of people are going to choose from this game and from basically the list that you just said. But when it comes down to it, the hardest decision this week might be, do you play Cooper or CD? And I think there's going to be people that play both. I'm one of the people who think differently and would rather go Keenan and one of the other two versus going with both. So I think based on that and the fact that CD's cheaper, I'll probably lean with CD. We saw 15 targets from him last week. It's just like a ridiculous usage.
And like the thing is, like, and this game sets up to be even more pass heavy. So yeah. I mean, something to be said.
It's such a condensed target tree right now. 15 targets to CD Lamb and 17 targets to Amari Cooper. So they're both seeing ridiculous volume and
they're cheap.
A game that we expect it to be. Yeah, both under 7K, which makes it. I mean, we're seeing Devontae Adams type usage, DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, and all of these guys are 1,000 less.
Yeah, 15 to 1,000 less, exactly.
So, I mean, just from that point of view, that's where I can see people just taking them both because they're both great values. But I don't know. In my mind, it's hard to see them both getting 15 plus targets every game. So I think there's going to be some sort of regression there. On any given week, though, I think one of those two is always going to get at least 10 targets, if that makes sense. So it could be Cooper this week, it could be CD next week, but I think it's kind of a lock that one of them is going to be heavily targeted at least. So it's hard to pick wrong, in my opinion, between these two, because I think they're both pretty locked into a role that in head-to-heads, if you have one and the other person has the other, then it could be the difference, and it's just you're playing a little game of luck in that sense. But I personally think I would go CD with Keenan. Mike Williams is very interesting, not for cash, I don't think, but very interesting for tournaments because this seems to be a year that we're going to see. I'm expecting a good year out of Mike Williams.
Agreed.
Keenan, we just know one of the best route runners in the league, and he could easily come out of this game with, we've seen him have 20 targets in games before. So Keenan, I think, is way more locked into the volume.
Yep.
Yeah, he's safer volume, but I do think Mike Williams has that crazy upside because he gets the downfield targets that turn into 60-yard touchdowns. So I like Mike Williams in tournaments where maybe you go a lineup that's a little different and you stack Herbert with Mike Williams and then maybe bring it back with Zeke in that lineup and play none of the pass catchers for Dallas. There's a lot of fun ways that you can be different this week because so many people are going to be playing anyone from that game that you want to try to find whoever's like lowest owned or the lowest owned combos in there. That's where someone like Cedric Wilson is very interesting with Gallup out. So Cedric Wilson's 3,100, and if you go with a build with him, then all of a sudden you can afford guys like Kamara, and it's a way to be slightly different in a game that most of the lineups are going to have CD and or Amari in it if they're stacking that game. So Cedric is an interesting way to be different, and maybe he gets a 40-yard touchdown, and then for 3,100, that's already a great play.
And not to go off the rails here, but I like Jalen Guyton more than Cedric Wilson this week in terms of tournament plays.
Probably lower owned too.
Yeah, he's 3,100. He's clearly the number 3 wide receiver on that team. Saw 5 targets last week. He's just like what they have done in the past with Guyton is he pretty much just like runs straight lines down the field to like clear shit out. But I mean, at the same time, that could easily come open against the freaking Cowboys. So not playing with cash, but I do think he's an interesting like pivot play in terms of like a guy that could easily catch a 50-yard bomb for a tutty. So let's just move along here for the sake of time. Another guy I expect to be very highly owned is going to be Cooper Kupp. He's coming in just at a mere 6K. Saw 10 targets last week, turned into 108 yards and a touchdown. the guy is the clear number one receiving option, at least just, 1 week, one small sample size, of course. But like the one thing that I thought was most interesting is like in the years past, if there was like one of these wide receivers between Kupp and Woods that was, for some reason not seeing as many snaps or routes run, like it always had been Kupp and Woods has been the guy, but that completely switched. I mean, like I think Van Jefferson was out there more than Woods at one point in time. So like, I mean, I'm not on Woods. I'm not trying to shit on Woods here at all, but like Cooper Kupp at 6K. We talked about Stafford is one of your quarterbacks that you like. For that price at 6K for being the number one option for Stafford, there's got to be some interest, particularly if you do play Stafford.
Yeah, I expect Cooper Kupp to be the highest owned player on the slate because of the fact that you're choosing between CD or Amari. You're choosing between, do you go up to Keenan Allen or do you like take Cooper instead and choose others? But Cooper Kupp is cheaper than all of those other guys that we were talking about in the other game, except those 3K ones. But the running backs, you're making decisions in each of the upper and lower range by 3 different players. So I think Cooper Kupp just like stands out as kind of his own entity in a way. Mm-hmm. So what is nice about that is a very easy pivot to make in tournaments is just pick Cooper Kupp. I'm not as excited to play Van Jefferson per se, but
that's fair. That's fair.
The nice part about Robert Woods, kind of what you're saying as well, is last year it seemed like Woods was getting more touchdowns than in years past, and so if he's a guy that is more likely to get touchdowns, but maybe less likely to get 100-yard bonus, then we could see him get multiple touchdowns in this game. Cooper Kupp only gets if Kupp gets 6 catches for 80 yards, no touchdown, but Woods gets 5 for 50 and a touchdown or 2, then all of a sudden you're hopping over all those Kupp teams in tournaments, mm-hmm. and with $300 of your savings, isn't that much, but just the ownership pivot alone, if you get 18 points from Woods and everyone else is getting 15 from Kupp, you're already ahead of those other teams with similar builds likely.
And then let's pivot down to the cheaper players, before I give you an opportunity to kind of just talk about anybody. One person that I have heavy interest in getting in my lineups this week is going to be Emmanuel Sanders. He's at 4K right now. I talked about a bounce back game from the Bills, but they're going to be passing the ball. They even pass the ball in neutral game scripts. This is a passing football team. Josh Allen is good. The box score wasn't necessarily lit up with Emmanuel Sanders last week, but just to give you some stats to talk about some of the peripherals that I like. Tied with Diggs, 93% snap rate. Clearly the second wide receiver in that regard. 55 routes run. That was in the top 5 in the NFL in week 1. 8 targets. We love to see 8 targets out of a 4K wide receiver, do we not? 16% target share, also pretty solid. And then he had 149 air yards, again, top 10 in week 1. So, things just didn't land for him. I think the matchup was just super tough considering. Matchup is not as tough this week. And, if he's going to be that clear number 2 guy, again, the peripherals are looking nice with Emmanuel Sanders at 4K. I find that to be a really nice place to be able to, save some cash and put him in my lineup and feel pretty safe with him, at least 2xing his price.
Yeah, and it's for only 600 more, you can get Cole Beasley as well, who has similar profile.
Agreed,
13 targets last week.
Agreed.
So this is just another reason why I like Josh Allen so much, because this is so similarly the same scenario as the Cowboys have, where you have a solid quarterback who is likely to throw the ball a bunch, and you have multiple options. And in this case, you have 2 options less than 5K. That really opens up the rest of your lineup. I mean, I'm not against going with one of these 2 with Diggs. All of a sudden, it's 11,700 to get Diggs with Sanders. And if instead you were going to go with the Cooper with CD build, that's over 13K. So I mean, you're saving money by doing that different stack. So that's really what interests me on that build, is it allows you to play Diggs and you're also doing the double stack. that other people aren't doing. So that's one of my favorites. And like you said with Sanders, the only concern I have with him is, I mean, he's older.
Could be a little
does
dusty.
seem like
Could be a
he's
little
a
dusty.
little dusty. He has seemed that way in the last few years, where he's just like a guy on the team where he'll probably have a few games here and there. But overall, I don't know. I think I lean Beasley just from the way that they use him, and he's more likely to come out of this game with 8 catches versus 8 catches that maybe he like can do stuff with, versus Sanders, who might just get like 8 catches for 50 yards or whatever. So I think I lean Beasley between those two, but if you need the 600, it's easy enough to just go down to Sanders.
Another player like somewhat cheap is going to be Jamar Chase at 5K. I mean, the Bears relative weakness is going to be their secondary. I mean, we just saw Matthew Stafford put up week 1's highest passer rating. It's not great. I mean, I'm not saying Burrow is Stafford, but at the same time, like, the Bears secondary did not look very good. Chase is a stud. Some people out there call him a generational prospect. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but like he's the real deal. Like, watching him in that game, like, he's the absolute real deal. It was 7 targets, not great, but for 5K, 7 targets, fine. But he caught 5 balls for 101 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I think he does have that upside, and I think there is a decent floor there as well with Chase. And, I think this is, in my opinion, a bit egregious, just because I really do like Jamar Chase, and at 5K, I'm like, that kind of talent at 5K.
I mean,
seems a little
he's
bit
a
off.
Rookie, so I think he's not in the algorithm yet.
Yeah. So I think that this is one of the most, my opinion, like, I could be eating my words here, but I think it's one of the most mispriced players on the slate with Jamar Chase at 5K.
Yeah, he's another guy where when I was saying before, I'm going to end up choosing between CD and Cooper, one of them. And then likely the other 2 wide receivers I'm going to go with is
Bills and
Chase and Cup.
Okay, Cup, gotcha. All right, yeah.
Yeah. It depends on how much money I have, if I can get a Keenan Allen, but I think I don't end up going down to Sanders because of Chase.
You don't need to, because you don't necessarily need to. Like 1,000 more, I would much rather have Chase than Sanders. Yeah. I totally get that, man.
One of my favorite stacks when I've been building here is, as I mentioned before, you could go with Burrow. You go Burrow, Chase, bring it back with Allen Robinson. You have so much money in that stack. I mean, that's 17K for a quarterback in the 2 wide receivers.
Allen Robinson 62. Shit.
Yeah, Allen Robinson 62. And so I mean, that's some sort of stack, I think.
And Allen Robinson saw 11 targets, mind you, last week. I mean, like, granted, like, Dalton blows, but like, what happens if, like, in the first quarter Dalton blows and they put in Fields, and then all of a sudden Allen Robinson blows up?
It doesn't even matter how bad Dalton is.
That's what I'm saying. You get 11 targets from Allen Robinson at 6,200.
You know what this game is?
Hit me. What is it?
Andy Dalton is facing his former team.
Are we? Is the revenge game?
The revenge is real in this game. This is a revenge game for Andy Dalton. If you believe in revenge narratives, I mean, this
I don't
is
have
the
the
type
sack
of,
to play Dalton, but
is this not an actual like real life revenge game? This is like he'd been on the Bengals for so long. They go and draft Burrow, send him off. Like this is the type of thing that like is actually thought of as a revenge game, not just a random guy who like used to play on a team for a year. This is what, like, if you're going to talk about a revenge game. So, but yeah, all jokes aside, like, would it surprise you if Andy Dalton came back out in this game and like played like Andy Dalton of a few years ago, where, he could make Allen Robinson have 12 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns? Like, those are some things that he would do. Like, how different is Allen Robinson in this game versus like AJ Green in his prime with Andy Dalton throwing to him?
I think what it comes down to is, like, I don't have the sack to play Dalton, but the next best thing is just playing Allen Robinson to try to like kind of hedge that revenge game narrative.
And you're saving the stack that I had. You're saving $3,000 off of the Dallas stack.
Yeah, I mean, fading the Dallas stack is a bold
you don't
fight.
even have to fade it too. Like you could still in this lineup throw in Cooper as your other wide receiver, or throw in Zeke or something like that.
You don't have to
it allows you to fit Keenan. It allows you to fit Cooper. And I guess that's why when I was building and I saw it with Burrow, you make that Burrow stack. All of a sudden, you're way different of a construction from other teams. And the thing with that Dallas game is, yes, it's over under 55. But if that game ends like, I don't know, 21-17, all of a sudden, if you don't have that stack,
you're likely cashing.
You're probably doing a lot better. Yeah.
Yep. All right. And then for the sake of time, Lou, is there a wide receiver or maybe two, I'll give it to you if you're quick, that we have not talked about that you have interest in?
I kind of like Antonio Brown. He's the same price as Cooper Kupp and is going to be way less owned. You liked Brady a little bit earlier. I think
agreed.
The way that Antonio Brown was used last week and the friendship that we hear him and Brady have formed, I like Antonio Brown in that game. You can have him alone. You don't have to stack him with Brady, but $6K for Antonio Brown, who only a few years ago, Antonio Brown was easily considered the best wide receiver in the game. So to get a top tier wide receiver for $6K, like that really interests me.
All right, Lou, I'm going to ask you for 5 wide receivers here. 5 wide receivers that you are most interested in playing this week. Feel free to take just a quick second, but rattle them off for me, my man.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kupp, CD,
Chase.
Yeah, Chase will be my third. See, I don't want to take too many from that same game, but I think Keenan. I like Keenan a lot.
And the 5th.
And then I think I'll say Beasley. Actually,
I was about to say you're gonna.
I think I prefer Beasley over Sanders. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't hate it. So Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Chase, Keenan, and Beasley. Shifting over to the tight end position, something where I think we made the right call in some ways in fading Pitts last week in favor. I mean, I think I played Croft, but I mean he's still 2x this price. Anyways, looking at these prices of these tight ends, I mean, there's a couple things that stick out to me. I think like number one is going to be Tyler Higbee. We saw him out there 100% of the snaps, 23% target share. Stafford was looking his way. 4,100 is pretty damn cheap for a tight end who's 100% in there 100% of the time, and saw even like the 20% target share. So Higbee is a guy that I have had some interest in terms of looking at this week. And the other one was getting more of an ancillary piece of the game that we were talking about, and that's going to be Jared Cook at 3,900. In the end of the day, it's like I look at Jared Cook. Yes, he's aging, but like he's healthy now. And he saw 8 targets last week, and there's probably going to be more passing going around. So Jared Cook and Higbee are 2 of those guys that I think for 4,100 for Higbee and 3,900 for Cook, pretty goddamn cheap. And I like both those guys. Your thoughts?
I like them. I think you can also throw in Noah Fant into that list. That same kind of range. He had 8 targets as well last week. I think Higbee is going to be very chalky. It kind of goes with what I was saying on Kupp, where people are going to be playing the other pieces of that Chargers and Cowboys stack, where maybe you go with Cook because he's 3,900. You go like Herbert, Cook with CeeDee Lamb or Cooper instead of going up to Keenan. So that's where like when I'm building lineups, I kind of like to play around with it that way, where instead of Keenan, you go Cooper, and then to get the exposure to a Herbert stack, you go with Cook. So that's where I like playing Cook. He's a tight end, so it almost doesn't matter if he's aging or slow moving, because at the end of the day, like if he's the guy that's getting the touchdowns, then it doesn't really matter. And then Higbee is good. We've seen it in the past. Obviously, it was with a different quarterback, but we've seen games where Higbee
upgrade
gets
now.
multiple touchdowns. Stafford's his QB, who we already like. And the only issue I have with that game is, I mean, they're on the road, but it's an indoor game. And so, Stafford is probably more comfortable indoors as well. So Higbee
Certainly.
right now is the guy that I'm most interested in, but I think it's because I think he's the most likely to have at least 5 targets. Cook might be more likely to get touchdown, but I think Higbee's more likely to have that high floor in targets.
The last, so one player that if we're punting, so let's go to punting before we go anywhere.
Not even talking about the upper end guys.
We can, I guess, but like this
I don't
plan
to play them, but
yeah. James O'Shaughnessy, 2,700.
Oh, okay.
81% snap rate in week 1 and a 16% target share. And I think it's fair to say that the Jaguars are going to be passing. I think my punt play of the week is going to be James O'Shaughnessy. Like, we don't know, like, people don't even know this, but like 81% snap rate, like, we love to see that. 16% target share, like, that was pretty solid. They're going to be throwing again, so we can go up to the top after this. But like, my punt of the week is going to be James O'Shaughnessy. If you can't get up to Jared Cook at 3,900 or Higbee at 41, I'm okay. Similar to what we did with Croft last week, going to Shaughnessy at 27.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Not like
there's
I'm
not
necessarily rushing to do it either. The guy I was looking at.
No,
I know. I'm just saying. The issue I have with that, it's just, in general, I don't want to play a punt tight end every week, and
they're fun.
I don't know. It's not necessarily the best. But in this scenario, here's the issue I have. It's
hit me with it.
Chris Manhertz is there and got the touchdown last week. Is Manhertz going to be the guy close to the end zone? This game isn't expected to be that high scoring. Like, I get it. I get the play, but was last week just like flash and pan kind of idea?
Could be.
Is the cheap guy I was looking at before was Tyler Conklin. Way less sexy of a play, but seems like he's safe for 6 to 8 points as like a floor. I think it, in my mind, I think O'Shaughnessy is more likely to come out of this game with a 0 than Conklin. But I mean, you're punting, so like that, you almost don't care if they get a 0 for 2,700 tight end, because if it's allowing you to get better elsewhere, then it's worth it. What do you think about kind of like the Cook idea, but the problem is which of these you choose, Schultz? So
you're talking about Schultz or Jarwin? I can't do it, man. I can't make the decision,
because you've always been a big Jarwin fan.
I have been, but like I can't like pretend that the numbers don't speak for themselves. It's split. Yeah. And like, we're talking about a split on likely the 4th in pecking order in targets. Like, I know there's a lot of targets, but it's like, if there's a split in like, the tight end position to me is like the 4th pecking order in that offense. It's like, I can't do it, man.
No Gallup. So do they become the 3rd? Like, does Schultz or Jarwin become that 3rd option because there's no Gallup instead of Cedric Wilson?
I mean, Jarwin's cheaper than Schultz. So at 31, I could see it happening.
Yeah, it's just, that's the idea in my head, is Gallup is gone, and he's someone that in the past we've seen be a target around the end zone. So in a way, I'd almost rather punt that, because you're going with the game that you likely have a quarterback from, and we're expecting high scoring. So that kind of has some interest to me, but I don't know. I hate punting tight ends for that reason, because I mean, you're already throwing darts.
All right, and then I guess I got to bring it up. Darren Waller, 19 targets, 7,600.
Insane.
Not yeah. I mean, like, at 7,600 though, like, that's not too much of a price. But again, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers, so and I guess like tack that on there, like Kyle Pitts again. People love the peripherals of Kyle Pitts, like the amount of routes run and like things worked out well for Pitts on this, not in the box score, but like in terms of being seeing the usage, I should say, outside of the box score, people liked him, and he's still only 5,200, and I expect there to be not a ton of ownership his way, but people will be going back to Pitts in my opinion. So, real quick, thoughts on Pitts, thoughts on Waller.
I like Waller in general. 7,600 is that it's a very interesting price because it makes you think about playing him. If he was 7K, I think I'd have more interest. Again, I don't have a ton of interest in Kittle, which is, I don't know. Kittle's
the volume's not there. Like, the volume's not there. Man.
Only 5 targets. He had 78 yards. His thing is yak. Like he's as far as tight ends go, like he could have 5 targets and still get 100 yards in games. It's just like how he is as a player versus Waller. If Waller gets 9 targets instead of 19 in that game, we don't even see him at 7,600 this week. You know what I mean? So Waller kind of needs the volume. So that's where it's a little scarier to play him. Mm-hmm. And in that game environment, I could see that being a lower scoring game. And it's for 7,600. I don't think I can get there, at least not this week. Kyle Pitts, definitely interesting to me. I think, obviously, he's the type of guy, last week, one of the highest owned players on the entire slate, but highest owned tight end, everyone just plugged and played. And now we've seen a game of it. People are going to have that kind of sour taste in their mouth. Now he's $800 more expensive. He's a prime candidate for way less ownership, but way better production in this game. So I like Pitts a lot in that sense. Will I play him in cash? Probably not, because I'll do the Higbee thing that everyone else is doing. But I like Pitts in tournament lineups. I think, like you said, he fits the build to be able to have big games that Kittle or Waller could have, and he's cheaper than them.
All right, and then give me your 3 tight ends of the week, and if one of your tight ends isn't a tight end we talked about, give me a little spiel.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Pitts, Higbee, and then actually Fant as my third.
All right, man, love it. All right, let's close things out here with the defense. I think that like the glaring value for me at this point in time is going to be just the Steelers at 3K. They're playing the Raiders, who looks good against the Ravens, but it's a little bit suspect. We know the Steelers defense is good. We watched what they did to the Bills. So at 3K, I mean, they're pretty middling priced here. If I can fit the Steelers into my lineup, I absolutely am.
Yeah, I think they're good. You don't like the Saints for 100 more against Darnold?
I would prefer the Steelers straight up over the Saints.
My issue with playing defenses against Carr, and I might just have like an incorrect view on it, but I feel like Carr doesn't turn the ball over as much as we might think. Like he's more of a safety kind of quarterback. Obviously, he had one of the worst interceptions you could have in a game where it's overtime by the goal line, and that might be something that's in the back of people's heads as well. But I think, those are 2 where I'm probably going to have to decide between them, which I go with. But I mean, we see it every year with the Steelers, and they generally have good defenses. They generally apply good pressure. We see how often they can come up with touchdowns as that defense. So I don't hate the call at all. I think I might go cheaper. I might go like way down to the Jets. What do you think of the Jets?
Yes, I'm in for the Jets. I
think they're my cash.
Like I'm not bought in. I'm not bought in on the Pats offense. So like
first thing I do when I click defense is I just go to the bottom and start scrolling up until I see one that I might have interest in.
I do the exact same thing, dude.
Jets are facing a rookie quarterback. They're not the worst defense that, I mean, yes, like they're not like a great team, but they're the type of bad team that has a defense that will apply pressure, and they're at home against a rookie quarterback.
42.5 point over under, nice and low.
Yeah. So I think that's probably where I'll end up going in cash. But yeah, if I have the money, I think Steelers Saints are probably better. The thing with the Saints that's different is that game I think is more likely to be a shootout, just because that's how Saints games end up being. Saints and Panthers division game, division game too. So I think as I've been thinking about it, probably Steelers is where I would lean now between the two. So Steelers and Jets, probably those are the two I'm looking at. I don't know. Do you have anything in between? Obviously, like the Browns are not going to be a bad play, but they're 3,500 for a defense.
I mean, I think, like if I don't see it happening, but like obviously the Bucks versus the Falcons. Falcons looked anemic against the Eagles. We know the Bucks defense is good, so. Yeah. I mean, if I'm paying up, but like paying up a defense is my last priority when creating a lineup. So nothing there, man. Final thoughts on week 2 main slate.
Yeah, I think there haven't been that many crazy injuries this year, but one we didn't really talk about was the Elijah Mitchell thing, which is kind of interesting to me because he was the hottest thing on the waiver wire this week. Fair. But now when it comes to like DFS, where he's not priced that high, but I don't really see too many people talking about him either. What's your take on Elijah Mitchell? Like, is he someone that we should be looking at more? Because I spent, it was $225 out of $500 worth of fab, and I didn't get him. So people are spending 50-60% of, or even up to 100% of their waiver wire on him, but it doesn't seem like people are super gung-ho to play him in a somewhat decent matchup, a game they're going to be expected to lead. He's someone we didn't talk about that I meant to.
I mean, I'm definitely in the minority on this one. Like, I don't know what's going on with Trey Sermon, but I love Trey Sermon. I think he's a great running back. I think the 49ers also did. Like, I don't know what's going on in camp where they're benching, I mean, that's the thing is like, I'm like, oh,
they see something, right?
Yeah,
they probably see something.
But they're like, oh, fuck, like Trey Sermon's inactive. I'm like, what the hell's going on? But like, Ayuk was also benched. We know Ayuk is a great talent. So like, I don't know what kind of message that
what's going
Shanahan
on
is trying to send to these guys. Like, do they have egos or something? And he's like, no, we don't need. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, but like, it's the 49ers, man. They saw 4 running backs last year lead the team in running back snaps. 4 running backs. Like, it is Shanahan. We can't trust it. I wouldn't be surprised if Sermon led the team in carries or in fantasy points this week. I don't know if I'd probably be surprised if it was Hasty, but it wouldn't be the most wild thing in the world if like Hasty was out there getting a lot of work as well.
Even the just red zone.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in Trey Sermon. I know there's a lot of cynicism, rightly so, around Trey Sermon right now. But at the same time, like I think Trey Sermon's a better back, and I think that the cream will rise to the top in that regard. And we know it's going to be as Shanahan does it. You can't ever guess what's going to happen, and you can't ever really know where that work's going to go. I think Elijah Mitchell's a fine running back. But at the same time, like, I just don't trust the situation. He's just not a guy that I'm interested in. It wouldn't surprise me if Sermon led the team in snaps or touches in week 2.
Yeah. Then I'll say that this is the type of week that is fun for tournaments. Last week was like, it's cash. Like, everyone's playing basically the same lineup or two. This week, since so many people are going to be focused on that one Dallas and LA game, the easiest thing you do is play less of that game or play something different in that game, and then all of a sudden your entire lineup is just built different. So it's very easy to make good tournament teams this week because you just change who your quarterback and wide receiver combo is, and then you're just different from everyone else that's trying to do the same exact thing with, as we mentioned before, there's going to be like 6 wide receivers that they're all choosing from and 2 quarterbacks. So if you choose a different quarterback with a different wide receiver and, Robert Woods or something, all of a sudden you have a completely different lineup. So it's one of the more fun weeks to make tournament teams. I think I might end up making more than I normally do. But I'm excited to watch this week for sure.
All right. That's going to do it for the Daily Destroyer DFS show, part of the Dynasty Warzone Network. Make sure you follow Lou at Lou Dog Sports on Twitter and myself at FF Tyler O. That's all we have today, folks. Don't forget, tell somebody you love them. Later.